And we're live.
We are so live. I keep on forgetting. Is it 36 now? Like what version of the Curiously?
I think we're
20.
on 26.
Oh,
20 This is our
26.
26th episode. Yeah,
26th
I know, right?
episode.
How did
Yeah.
that happen?
I don't know. Just occurred. Um, Thank you for everyone who's joining live and those who are listening to this recording later on, which is just fantastic. Today's Curious Leaders Path is about influencing others and being open to being influenced. So joining me is my other what do you call co-leaders or tree lead? I don't know. Partners in crime is what I like to
There we
call
go.
them. Todd and Kat,
That'll work.
and I am Joanne. That'll work. Okay. And so this is like a topic that kind of it keeps coming up in, I was mentioning to Kat and Todd, that comes up a lot in my mentorship program. So I have an agile mentorship program in Toronto that's been around since 2017, and we get everyone to create their own learning backlog of what they want to learn. And so this backlog seems to always have on the top of the list, how do I influence leaders?
hmm
And so this particular question in the context of like driving change in organizations, driving transformations, and like, it's very, very alive in the agile or any transformational space, like when you're trying to adopt something brand new. And so when we started to talk about this, and then, I mean, we have like in terms of influencing leaders, there's certain steps that you can take, and I want to learn and understand that too. But what I thought was really interesting, because Kat and Todd, like both you guys have played like the executive type positions or coach executives, and so you're at this level of executive, like, and for me, I mean, I do a lot of work with a lot of leaders, and so I get really curious about how do you become influenced, like how do you become open to being influenced. But before maybe we start with that, because Kat, you were just before we started, there was something you said and I went, oh my gosh, the word influence. Like, talk about the word influence and what comes up for you when you started to talk about influence, because I think it's important to share.
I think a lot of people, when they think of influence, they think of it as how do we get people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. That's a bit of a blunt description. I think everybody's got a bit more subtlety and nuance to it, but that's kind of how I think a lot of people perceive influence.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I've often worked in environments where I have very little power and I still need to get things done, and I need to get very powerful people to do things.
Mhm.
And it's generally a matter of, first of all, I have to align what we're doing to things that they care about. And I have to make sure that I understand what it is that they want so that I can sort of try and pull them in and
Mhm.
motivate them to do stuff that's basically self-serving. But there's also an element for a lot of times that I've worked with people, it's also a matter of educating them. And it's not a matter of that I know more than they do. It's a matter of asking different questions and getting permission from them to play, to learn, to explore, to experiment. And that really comes to that word emergence, which is the one that I said before we
Mhm.
started talking on camera. And it really is, we live in these worlds. I've always worked in very innovative environments of different types. Um, but the world that we're going into, where pretty well everybody needs to be much more innovative than we currently are, even if it's an operational role. And there's this element of emergence. Everything is changing around us. And because everything is changing around us, we're changing, and the people around us are changing. Everything is changing all the time.
Mhm.
And therefore, we need to make sure that we're sort of keeping our heads above water. Ideally, that we're sort of able to see where we're going as much as we can. But emergence is kind of unpredictable. So it
Mhm.
really is a matter of, rather than being influenced, it's being open and being curious and being willing to play and see what works, to see what's possible.
Mhm.
And I think the one thing that we were talking about too, which I thought was which is interesting too, is to bring out when you talk about influence, right? There's this power over. right? Or power under. It's like there's a power thing to it,
Yeah.
which makes me feel that there's stuff that there's reasons why people aren't influenced, or it's hard to influence others, right?
Mm.
So when I say it's hard to influence others, what comes up for you? Like, what makes it difficult to influence others?
Mm.
You want to jump in, Todd?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, and I think this is an awful lot like what you described, Kat, but it has evolved. So I'm going to go to sort of like the visceral, knee-jerk reaction that I have to the word influence, which I traditionally didn't like. But being influenced to me in the past has often felt like a sign of weakness.
Mm.
Right. So if I'm open to being influenced, then I'm not sure of myself. Then I'm not confident in my capability, in my knowledge, in my whatever. Right. It's almost like it's an admission of unpreparedness. And I think I'm making up that way of looking at sort of being open to being influenced isn't uncommon, particularly in people who've climbed the leadership ladder, right? And I love it when I see Kat nodding, because it makes me think, okay, I'm onto something.
I think it's
certainly that's how I felt in the past. Yeah.
Both of you have worked in quite corporate environments where there are right ways and wrong ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And I tend to have worked in
much to my chagrin sometimes.
So the leadership that works in those environments is the one where there's a certainty, right? Or it's a false certainty, but it's this idea that I should have all the answers. I should. There's no curiosity. There's no experimentation. There's no creation, because technically in the corporate world, it's about exploiting. It's about milk what we've got. That's a horrible way of stating it. But that really is. So there's no room for curiosity. Oh, there's that word.
Ding.
All of us.
There you go.
The curiosity bells.
Yay. Yeah, so I think in those environments, there's no room for curiosity. And the problem is, for a lot of people that have succeeded in those environments, it's going to be really, really hard to embrace this emergence that we're going to have to do, because you're not alone, Todd. Like, think of how many people don't have that realization that they're invested in having control. They're invested in being right. And when people get scared, that gets worse.
Yep. You double down, you dig your heels in, and you say, I'm not going to be open to being influenced, because, the chips are down and this is my responsibility. And I'm going to run with that responsibility come hell or high water. And it doesn't matter. Like and a lot of things stop mattering from that perspective. And I think what's really, really interesting is when we start talking about influenceability, is that a word? Influenceability from that perspective. And I talked about this a little bit, before we were on camera. It starts to become something that feels like it could erode my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? Like that thing that I worked so hard at to create, that's mine and mine alone. All of a sudden, if I'm going to open myself up to someone else, if I'm going to open myself up to those ideas, to whatever, particularly if it's something big, particularly particularly, I'm not going to say what, but particularly if it's something big, it can feel like, it's like, I'll feel it right here. It can be something that feels like it's going to just stick in the back of my throat and like heartburn.
Well, because it makes you feel lesser than. It makes you feel, when you're not living up to the identity that you believe you should have. And if that identity is based on having control and having all the answers, and assuming that there actually are answers, as opposed to better questions and curiosity, to use that word,
Exactly.
then it will destroy you. There's quite a bit of research to say that we will fight to the death to protect certain identities that we've got, right? So you having that reaction is not strange, and it's not unusual, but it is a signal to say maybe it's time to rethink how we want to be seen or how we want to see ourselves.
How we want to be seen. And I think that's the thing, because there's something manufactured in how I want to be seen.
Yeah, well, because there's another person that's seeing you too, which makes it a difference, right? So, which is really important. I also feel that they're like, in terms of from a corporate space too, that, to be influenced when you have no control is really difficult. Like, I make up that a lot of leaders who are in that particular space that have a certain amount of, they can't influence their leaders, it just makes it a really, really tricky situation, right? So they're told that they have to do this particular thing, and therefore that's just the way it all works. That's how the chips fall. We have, only so much money. We have only so many things, that they stick to their guns because that's what they committed for their leaders too. So there's this aspect of, even though it may not, they want to be able to they may want to be influenced and supported to change, but they can't, right? Because of the situation that they're in. Yeah.
Ooh. And well, okay. So this is a whole different topic. So I'll bring it up. I'm going to just sort of plant the seed, and then we can talk about it if we want to. But what comes up for me when you say that is the connection between influence and culture. Because if culture is top down, and I do believe it is, like, it's obviously it's everyone's responsibility, but it starts at the very top of the organization. So if culture is top down, and what you have at the very top of the organization is a leader who is open to being influenced, then it's possible for that to cascade, to use more corporate speak and HR speak, for that to cascade through the organization, so that you can have influenceable, middle managers or senior managers. Yeah, which is fantastic and great. But the thing is you're right. If the folks who want to be influenceable are here and they're hitting a ceiling that has no influenceability, then they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, quite literally.
Yeah. Actually, what came up for me is the growth mindset and the closed mindset, right? To be influenced, it is more of this open, growth kind of mindset, right? But anyways, I mean, I don't want to sit there and say there's, if you can't be influenced, you're not open, but because some of it is.
There is a lot of truth to that.
Okay.
I would say there's a lot. I mean, yes, there are some parameters where we get locked into certain actions for one reason or another. So that does happen. But what you're describing, Todd, is a learning culture. Yeah, a growth mindset, to use that term, Joanne, as well. It's a learning culture. And to me, being influenced doesn't mean I'm going to do everything you tell me. It doesn't mean I abdicate my own responsibility, right?
Yes.
It means I listen to what you say to me. And my first reaction might be, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And I might, do this, and I might whatever. But then I go home, hopefully, and think about it and think, actually, there's probably some truth to it, right? Maybe I need to ask you a few more questions and see if I'm understanding you. Or maybe there's some expertise that you've got that I don't have access to. Who knows what it is, right? So it's about negotiating a learning process. It's not about just blindly following. Influence it's not abdicating control. It's about changing what you control.
Yep. It doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. Let's try that again. It doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. It just means that I have more to learn.
Yeah.
And we all do.
Yeah.
And we all do, like all of us do.
All the time.
Exactly.
So let's go into the other aspect of it. So I'm really curious about you guys and how, and of course I'll share too, but how people influence you. So, I mean, there's certain, I know, like we were talking about earlier, like there's certain things that you cannot influence me to do. Like I am not going to hurt my mom, right? Although there's times where I get really, really mad at her, I am not going to do it, right? So you're not going to influence me to do things. which
Yeah.
morally, I think this is when it comes down to my moral values. I just won't, I can't do. But there is aspects of us that, you know, you can be influenced. So what helps you both be influenceable leaders? Like what you know, what's your story and your success there, or your learnings? Yeah.
Kat, do you want to go first, or
no? Go for it. You look like you got something.
So Joanna, I think you said one of the magic words, and for me that's values, and having clarity around what my values are makes it really easy for me to kind of go, yep, you know what, this is a place where I'm open to, you know, to influence. This is a place where I'm open to a dissenting opinion, where my curiosity is naturally wide, you know, like that kind of thing. And you know, and this is not to say that, you know, if I have a value and someone wants to challenge it, that I'm not open to having that conversation, because certainly I am. It's just when when I feel like I'm traipsing into a situation where influence would mean dishonoring a value, then I'm very cautious, and I am less open to being influenced in those situations.
Yeah. So okay. And tell us about how you tell us about how you become influenceable. Like, is there what shift all of a sudden, like you have this, I know you were talking, you had an example, but all of a sudden, you know, you're going to do this whole thing or whatever the case may be, and then a team member or, you know, a family member or someone comes to you and says, no, you know, right? No, we're not going to, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this instead, right?
Yeah.
How do you allow yourself to be influenced in those situations?
So the best example that I have is, and I'll share it with you. There may be people listening to this who are familiar with this, but when I was working at CIBC, I was leading a team of people who had jobs that I have never done before, and you know, I was the only member of the team who was not versed in that specific discipline, and it was business analysis. And I've never been a BA. That's not my thing. I understand how important and how valuable they are, and I understand, you know, what it's like to work with really good BAs, but I don't know how to be a good one. So here I am leading a team of people, and I think it was like 35-ish, you know, really excellent BAs. And I, you know, I had to be vulnerable. I had to be like, you know, all right, guys, you know, here's what I can bring. Here's what I can't bring. How do you want to help? And for me, it was like, how are we going to create a partnership? How are we going to be in this space? And I had to declare, you know, I didn't say specifically I'm open to being influenced right now, but it was sort of recognizing that in that moment I needed a particular kind of help from a population who was uniquely suited to provide that help. So that's what came up for me. But it did take, like, I gotta admit, like, that, you know, it took a couple months for me to kind of go like, oh, how am I going to do this? Because that was not natural for me at the time at all. Like, you know, my inclination was to like read a bunch of books and learn a bunch of stuff and see if I can figure out in 2 months what this team of people with, you know, 1,000 years of collective experience or whatever it was, right?
So becoming vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Just open.
Yeah.
And also what I heard was, you know, even making very transparent to the team. This is what I know, this is what I don't know, and this is, you know, this is how we can work together. Yeah.
Yeah. And part of it for me also was like, here's what I bring to the table.
Nice.
That like, here's what I have that I know you don't. And that's okay too, right? Because our roles are different. So let's partner, because there's stuff that I can do and maybe it'll be useful to you. I know there's stuff you can do that'll be useful to me.
And what was the result of that too? Sorry. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, it worked out really, really well. I mean, I am still close with many of those people. They are some of my favorite people. And I make up that we had a really great time. I had a great time, and I think they mostly had a good time too.
And you didn't think lesser of yourself or anything like that because you became more vulnerable?
Nope. Eventually.
Yeah.
But that was
Yes.
that was my learning experience. Like that was
Right.
the first experience that I had where it was like, oh, wait a minute, there's this thing, there's this tool, you
Right.
know, that's wrapped up in
Beautiful.
vulnerability and being able to be influenced and asking for help that I didn't know that I had available to me. And that was it actually started me on the path that I'm on right now.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Nice.
That's great. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good for you.
What you're describing to me is collaboration, and I define collaboration as co-learning and co-creating.
Mhm.
And we need lots of people with different types of skill sets to come together to collaborate well. You know, that's what diversity is all about. You know, I found several academic definitions of diversity of people who think differently, people who have different perspectives, different life experiences. Yeah, it's and that's what you were doing is, I mean, it was a narrow definition of diversity in your situation, but it still was diversity of thought, diversity of experience, right? In a professional setting. Obviously, we want more diversity than that. We want life experience and cultural diversity and everything else.
Yep.
But that to me was collaboration, what you were doing. And that to me is sort of like the ideal situation of influence, where we're coming in with our expertise. And I use the word expertise instead of coming in as an expert, because as an expert to me means we're fully cooked, we're done, we don't need to do anything else.
Mhm.
But if we come in with expertise, it means I really know a lot about this topic. I have a fair amount of experience. However, I also know enough to know that I need to keep learning.
Mhm.
So I'm not fully cooked.
And you know what comes up for me, Kat? Like, actually, sorry, the one thing that I'm really curious about, because you're a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And so what I wonder about is that you have a teacher, you have this teacher student role, right? And do you have situations where that the students have been able to influence you? And has that happened to you before? Have you
A lot
experienced that?
in the past.
Yeah. Nice.
The reason I'm saying in the past is I'm actually becoming less influenceable for a range of reasons. But the ideal situation to me and the most fun time when I'm teaching, coaching, facilitating, really doesn't matter what role it is when I'm influenceable and I'm open to learning and things like that. Yeah, so for me, being influenced as a teacher or any other role that I play actually makes things a lot more fun because it means that I'm learning. Ideally, I'm evolving. And it's a collaborative, like to me, real teaching is actually very much a collaborative effort of co-discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what gets me really curious, because I would sit there and say there's probably a shift in your life where it just like taught in a way that all of a sudden you became influenced and then you started to like it.
Yes.
I make up. There is a point in time when that happened.
Well, a lot of things got a lot easier. A lot of things got a lot easier. And that, like from a leadership perspective, like that was an aha moment that just lasted forever because the other way was so lonely
and exhausting and not joyful.
Oh my God, no, there was nothing good about it.
Yeah.
Like there really, really wasn't. And I look back at, you know, the times that I attempted to lead without that, like without that ability to be influenced by, you know, the people that I was leading. And it just made such a difference because you're right. It was exhausting. It was
lacking joy, lacking play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Lots and lots of anxiety, you know, lots of, you know, I need to present a certain way. I need to, you know, be in charge. I need to be, you know, all of that stuff. And when you can let some of that go.
You were a good corporate man, right? Like that is, and I don't mean to, I don't mean to generalize it because I think a lot of women do that too. But honestly, that's what I perceive. I mean, obviously this is overgeneralized and overstated, but that to me is what the corporate world is about, is basically always being an expert, fully cooked. I have the answers. I know how the corporation wants this. Exactly.
Yeah. That's how we're taught to lead.
Yeah.
That's how we're taught to lead.
There's one set of answers.
Yeah. And the good thing is that we can grow through that, right? So if we really want to choose to do, we can, you know, get into those uncomfortable situations and sort of drop our perspectives and learn from
Exactly.
that, right? And then
Mhm.
continue to grow. And it's sometimes it's challenging. Some of the expert level leaders, and there's a really great book
Mhm.
which I have, which is around leadership agility, and it goes through different
Mhm.
levels of leadership, which is really cool. But
Mhm.
expert is the most common, like it is the most common one, right? Because that's just normal, right? But to grow from
Mhm.
expert to the next level, it takes all of a sudden a look at oneself, like an
Mhm.
ability to kind of see and step back. Oh, that's the impact. Oh, I need to start getting collaboration. Oh, I need to, work with others. But let me share a story, a personal, like it just this is work, and so, and I
Mhm.
can share a story where, as I've been learning over the years, different tools and techniques as to um, take on different perspective and understanding that I play these different roles: a role of a mother, a role of a daughter, a role of an aunt, a role of a niece. You can go through and you have you have tons of roles, and there's
Mhm.
just, if you can think of, you have all the hats for those roles, right? That you
Mhm.
different play, and different perspectives will take different hats.
Mhm.
And so one of the biggest things for me was actually to take off the hat of being a mom. And so one of the situations that I had was my daughter choosing not to come home for Christmas for
Mhm.
one reason or another and stay where she was at. And so, and I had to, like, the mother inside me was going, no way, you're coming home, like, this is family. You have to come home, right? And the thing that I had to do is actually drop the role of a mother and just look at me, just like have no roles and just be like
Mhm.
human to human and go, okay, what is happening here? So it's like that metacognition and looking at the situation,
Mhm.
for what it is, and then going, this person's frustrated, this person's being upset, this person's whatever, and then just
Mhm.
be open to whatever's being said. Now the situation was beautiful because now I took on this, and now I really understood and had more compassion and empathy for what was going on. And then after that, once everything was dropped and the roles were dropped, she actually did end up coming home, which I was so grateful for. But it was the very first time in my entire life where I decided to drop roles. And the reason why is because I explored and tried to work on, this next level
Mhm.
of being, ding the bell, curious,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Being open and learning about who I am
I have to
and
do
work.
it. Just
There she goes.
can't miss it.
But it's that developmental growth change that we go
Yeah.
through, right? And I think, and I would dare say that and it's sad, but there's a lot of leaders that you cannot influence because they haven't chosen yet to take the next step, right? For
Mhm.
whatever reason, right? I don't want to blame them or shame them, but they just have not chosen to take that
I,
step.
I am making up that you said something really interesting that might be an incentive though.
Mm.
And because it would have been an incentive to me. You said, once you reach expert, then you have to think of the next level. And to be honest, I'd be willing to bet that there's a whole bunch of leaders out there that are like, what do you mean there's the next level? Once I reach
Well, there's
expert, that's it.
many
Well,
levels.
I know, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is once you know that there's more to go, once you hit expert, well, then it's like a challenge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like
For
maybe
the
that's the thing. Maybe
for the
that's the
expert.
thing that actually makes it interesting for an expert to want to continue up the path, knowing that there is more beyond expert.
Yeah.
Gamification of leadership.
Well, why not? Like what? Hey,
Yeah.
listen,
If
whatever
it
the thing,
works. Yeah.
exactly. Like if someone had said to me, you know what, that's great. Now you're an expert. Now there's 6 levels above expert. How are you going to get there? I'd been like, all right, let's do it.
Well, it's
Let's
like becoming a black belt.
What's the next one?
Yeah,
Exactly.
you're never just a black belt.
Exactly. I
Oh my
love
goodness.
that.
Oh, it is 7:29. We have a minute or less than a minute to go.
Mm.
Any words of wisdom for people for being influenced or influencing others or being influenceable?
Try
Curiosity
it.
and play.
Oh,
Triad. What's triad?
Yeah, try it. Just
Oh,
try it.
try it. Yeah.
Try it.
yeah.
It's not,
Have a
doesn't
purpose.
hurt.
Like it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
a set goal, but have a purpose. Where do
Hmm.
you want to go? What do you think is possible?
Yeah.
Play, be
Yeah.
curious, engage with
Exactly.
others.
Human to human,
Yeah.
right?
Believe in yourself. That you
Yeah.
can influence someone else too.
And that you
Exactly.
can
And that's the other
learn
one too.
and be
Yeah.
influenced. Yeah.
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 And it's more fun.
It's
more
a million
fun.
easier.
Oh
Like
my
it,
God, it's more fun. It's easier.
And
really
try, just try. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Like it's just, you'll learn, you'll keep learning. That's all.
and you get better results and more sustainable results. Like, I mean, really, there's no reason we shouldn't be doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like it.
Mm-hmm. Thank
There you
you.
go. That's the mic drop. There's
Yay!
really no reason we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
this
thank
is a
you,
fun one.
co-partners of crime. I really appreciate it. All right.
Indeed.
Really good to talk to
I'm
you.
glad I influenced you to do this topic.
Yay!
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. All right. Good
All right.
night.
Thank you very
See you.
much, everyone. And
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone who joined in.
Yeah.
See you next time.
time.